Okay.
Hi, Elsa. How are you today?
I am fantastic. How are you?
Awesome. Doing really well. Okay, so we're continuing with our video series on how to survive the holidays. Before we get started, I just want to introduce us again for those that are joining in for the first time. Can you please tell us who you are and what you do?
Sure. I am Elsa Johnson, and I'm a certified PQ coach. And I work with creative entrepreneurs and executives and professionals, um, helping them really figure out what is getting in their way of up-leveling their life, both personally and professionally.
Great. Okay. And I am Brienna Becker, also a certified positive intelligence coach and trauma-informed coach. I coach leaders on having more joy and empathy throughout their life. Okay. So today we are going to be introducing you to the Avoider Saboteur. As we've mentioned, we all have little voices in our head that sabotage us. This week we have been over the last couple of days, we've been reviewing different saboteurs and how they can come into play in your life. Today, we will talk about the avoider. So, what can we say about the avoider?
Well, the avoider, like we talked about the other days too, that it always starts with strengths, right? That it comes from an innate strength that we have. And the avoider strengths have a beautiful strength. They're the easygoing, the one that is very difficult to ruffle the feathers, the person that everybody want to be around because they're just nice. They're pretty laissez-faire, to just,
Yeah.
yeah, they're chilling. So they're really good people to be around. They can be very neutralizing in an environment. And but sometimes it gets taken to the extreme. And when it gets taken to the extreme, it's typically like we talked about with the other saboteurs, when we get hijacked, when our motivation becomes because we ourselves are not secure in the way we show up.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And the problem with being an avoider is you procrastinate. So, like you said, everybody wants avoiders as friends, and we both are avoiders and can identify with that. However, you don't want an avoider as your spouse or your colleague because they procrastinate. And if you want to get things done, unless you both are avoiders, if you want to get things done, avoiders can get in the way because they are taking their time to get whatever needs to get done completed.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about avoiders are that some things are getting done right, boom, boom, boom. But other things they're really dragging their feet. And why they're dragging their feet is typically because there's emotions behind it. Either they feel like they're getting hurt, that somebody is not going to like what they have to do. Maybe it's a difficult conversation. Maybe it's a job that they don't feel 100% qualified for, or it can be just a situation where they feel very uneasy about it. And that's where the avoider, when you get hijacked, that you're not able to face the music, basically. So you rather just run the other way.
Yes, yes. So one example would be for coaches asking for money from friends. That's
Mm-hmm.
not an easy conversation to have. Or um, having a conversation with your spouse about a need that you have.
Yeah, so and in the workplace, right, it can be your boss keeps giving you the same assignment that you don't feel really comfortable about, and then the boss gets down on you, so get going, and you're too afraid to tell the boss, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do.
Mhm.
But you want to be a good employee, so you just sit there and hide. And what happens then is, then some of us, like we talked about before, that the saboteurs, they don't work single. You can't always say, I'm only working, it's only the avoider, right? Then if you combine that, like let's say with a stickler and saying, I want everything to be perfect, then that procrastination just gets taken to a whole new level, because you sit there and you just feel so ashamed that you can't do it perfect. ashamed that you don't know what you're doing. And then with the avoider, especially, there is a lot of emotions where you really are very, very, very hard on yourself. The guilt, the shame is huge with the avoider.
Absolutely. Yes. And it's all, so much of it is just swallowed. Those emotions of guilt and shame are swallowed. You've got, for example, a wife that's saying, can you please do this, this, and this? The husband is so, if you got the stickler and the avoider, the husband is just stuck because he's like, well, I could do it and I'm not going to do it to her standard. So I'm just not going to do it, and avoid having that conversation of, I'm scared to do it because it's not going to be to your level of standard. And then you get into feelings of inadequacy, of I'm not good enough. It can get really ugly.
It can. So what do we do about it? It's like all the other saboteurs, the awareness, just realize that when those things come in our PQ reps that we did the first day, where we did a little hair pulling and tensing, right? It helps us relax into it. Just make sure that we feel that emotion, because that's a long, the avoider is one of those that's difficult too. We avoid even recognizing what emotions are coming up, like the shame, like the guilt, like the just the feeling of inadequacy.
Anger. Get out of anger instead of feel it like, okay, well, let's just go do something fun. When sometimes you have to feel the anger to move it through your body and process it and to get it out.
Yeah. One of the things that's huge with avoiders too, and I know you're going to give us a really good example, but I think one of the things that happens with avoiders too is you run the conversation in your head. Like you have that boom, boom, boom conversation. I'm standing up to myself. I'm saying all these things. And then when you face that person that you want to have that difficult conversation with, you just, you shut up like a clam. You just can't get the words out. And in your head, then you're like, afterward, then you pound yourself and saying, why didn't I say this? Why didn't I communicate this? So the communication, helping somebody with a strong avoider understand what are the steps they can take for themselves to lay out a plan, to have that communication so they feel really, really safe. And you and I were talking about a really good example where you were able to regulate yourself through a process like that. Do you want to share that?
Sure. So the other day I was in a group meeting and I was happy, I was fine. But an hour later, I was pissed off at what was discussed because I don't know, I feel like some people were not taking responsibility for their part. And I sat on it for a night and then I was like, I'm going to go ahead and express this. So I wrote a letter and told them, hey, look, I was pissed off because of X, Y, and Z. But then, like, I was able to move it into acceptance and understanding. I was able to, okay, I understand why this is a problem and prohibits the effectiveness of the program. However, when are you going to take responsibility for your part? So it was kind of a little bit of empathy, but then also being very fierce and like, hey, take some responsibility as well. And it was not necessary. It felt good to get it out. And I also expressed it with 2 people on the side before I expressed it with 12 people. When I expressed it with 2, it was vocally, but then with 12, it was in a text, like in a letter or post. However, who writes letters these days? But it really, and then I was on the edge of my seat for, kind of the day, like, how are people gonna receive me with this? Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she wrote that. Like, is she really thinking this? And I had to just like, hey, I put it out there. I was bold and I hope it's received well, but at least it's off my chest now. And luckily it was received well, and it's made some positive changes. I believe people were able to take what I said, and there's been a shift in energy. So But if you don't speak up, your needs are not met. And that sits in your body. I would have brought that to the next meeting.
Yeah.
That anger. So it was better. It took a couple days to process it, but it was better that I expressed my anger.
Yeah.
Of course, I was like, well, why can't I be very chill about this? But it's like, no, the reality is I was pissed off. So here's the reality, and I'm sharing it with you.
Yeah. And so you so beautifully laid out, how can we support ourselves or somebody else who has an avoider, right? Because what happens if you don't, then you lay sleepless at night running that whole thing over you. I should have, could have, would have, all those kind of things, right? It keeps lingering, like you said. So you did one. First of all, one of the things that we talk about in the PQ framework is that you always have to remember the other person is at least 10% right, right? So because the other person is 10% right, that means you also have to acknowledge that they might have some issues with what's going on, right? So you, in your letter, you expressed your anger. You expressed that you had empathy, like you said, for the other person, saying, I can understand your situation too, because having a difficult conversation doesn't mean that the other person have to fully agree with you. And that's the big thing too. Understand that you have a right to have your opinion, and another person have their right to have another opinion, as long as you can respectfully agree to disagree. And I think that's a really important part of the avoider, feeling safe to express their feelings without being judged, without feeling shameful, without feeling guilty. And then, that mutual respect is built.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
So,
but I was, so I didn't feel any shame or guilt. It was more just bracing myself, like, I hope I don't hurt somebody's feelings. So I guess that is a little bit of guilt.
yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So maybe we could just touch on one other thing that helps the avoider. And that's like reviewing the procrastination list.
Sure. Absolutely. You want to share that?
Yeah. So, so the avoider has our long list of to-dos and kind of pushes it aside. So when you're in like a good state of mind, go ahead and take that list out. And what you want to do is look at what's most important and most impactful, and then number them and just start tackling away. Yeah. But be kind to yourself when you do it. And if you get one thing done, celebrate the one achievement you made.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to enlist people to help you if you feel uncertain about it, right? It's better to say, I really want to get this done, but I'm just stuck on how to move forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great. I think we provided some value for the avoider. Yeah. And I hope it's helpful to our audience.
Yeah. So we will end now and get this posted so we don't avoid getting that done.
Absolutely.
Have a great rest of your day, and I can't wait to talk with you again soon.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.